Hi, it's Jen, and today I'm doing a video called 15 Ways to Watercolor. So this is basically going to be, what I've done is I've experimented with different items that I have in my stash to see if I could watercolor with it. So I picked all the ones that I can watercolor with, so this is not going to be a technique video or a card making video per se. I do make cards, and those are at the end of the video. I show each project that I've made a card with. And I made a card for every project or watercolor technique that I used except for one. And so what I'm doing here is taping down my watercolor card. And this is all Canson XL watercolor paper. I'm using the smooth side. And I use both my water brush and I think an 8-inch round paintbrush. So you'll see I tape off some different cards in different ways. So this first card is going to be stripes, and I'm using my Distress Oxide, so it's Twisted Citron, Picked Raspberry, and Blue Lagoon, maybe? I don't remember. It's one of the colors in the second series that was just released. So I just go ahead and I have wet the card stock or the watercolor paper down before I actually put the paint on it. So it's wet on wet basically, because I've put my inks down on my mat and sprayed them. So with the extra ink, I didn't want to waste it, so I'm just doing some smishing with that extra ink, and then I'll dry that off and reapply more ink until I've used about every single drop of ink I've had on the paper. So this is the finished product, and at the end of the video I will show you the card that I actually make. So the first one was Distress Inks. The next one I'm going to be using, or Distress Oxide Inks. The second card I'm going to be using pan watercolors. So these are all watercolors that come in a pan. And I did not wet this paper down. I just applied it wet to dry. So the first color is from my Praying set. This is the Shimmer from Artist Loft. And this set right here is just the regular $5 Artist Loft watercolors. And this is my Kiritaki Gansai watercolors. And then this last one is Master's Touch Metallic. And those I got at Hobby Lobby. I don't think it's a Hobby Lobby brand, or maybe it is. And so that completes that card. The next I am using Tombos, and I'm using the Artist Loft watercolor pens. These look so similar in so many ways. The barrel's is about the same. The tip, they work pretty much the same. So the first one I put down was the Artist Loft, and the second one that I'm doing right now is the Tombow. And so I'm just putting a little bit of ink on the paper and then wetting it. This next one, what I did was I put the marker directly on the mat. So next I'm doing the yellow. This is the Tombow, I believe. I hear so somewhere, I don't even know. Yes, the first one was the Tombow, and the second one is the Artist Loft. So I probably got the first one backwards. I think the first one was Artist Loft, the second color was Tombow. So the two in the middle are Tombow, the two on the bottom are Artist Loft. So I'm going to go ahead and I tried to match the colors up, but they all didn't match exactly. So the green kind of doesn't show real well. But I'm doing this on dry paper also. And this is the one that I'm just putting on my mat. And then I do a little bit of probably a red or a pink. And I believe that's an Artist Loft. And then I try and go back over on the green. It didn't really show up very well, or it looked like green, but now it's like brown. So the third color I'm using Distress markers, and Crayola markers, and another water-based marker, I believe. So I'm just using blacks and pinks and reds. So pretty much any water-based marker you'll be able to watercolor with. You know, you see the products come out all the time, and for me, I'm like, oh, I want to get those. Like, I want to get the watercolors that are on those little slips of paper, and can't even think what they're called. But you know what? I don't really need them. Like, there are so many things that you probably already have in your stash that you can watercolor with. Some of the markers you can't watercolor with are Sharpies. You can't watercolor with alcohol markers. You can probably do a little bit more with alcohol markers and rubbing alcohol, but with water it doesn't work. But like just some cheap Crayola markers, or even I tried just some cheap water-based markers that I have from the dollar store. They work awesome. The colors, kind of like a watercolor, it's nice and light and kind of more pastel-y. So really, you probably have a lot of stuff in your stash already that you can use. So the next one I'm doing is Distress Inks. So these aren't the oxides, these are Distress Inks. And I tried to pick kind of the same colors as I did in the oxides. And so I'm just putting these down on my mat and spraying them with water. And this is going to be another dry piece of watercolor paper. So I did not wet it first. So I do a few lines of that, and then since I don't want to waste it, I went ahead and did some more smishing with another piece of watercolor paper. And so the next ones I'm going to use are my Close to My Heart inks. So these I picked pretty similar colors and they match up really well. So this is a dye-based ink. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm putting it on my mat and then squirting it with watercolor, or water. And then just drawing some stripes on my paper. And then again, I'll do some more smishing to use up that ink. But as you can tell just by looking at these, I spritz this with water also, and you did get the water droplets with removing the color, even on the dye-based ink, the Close to My Heart ink. So when I look at this, I can't tell. I mean, the Distress inks on top are a little more vivid, I guess. But other than that, I mean, they do look pretty much the same. I tried to use the same amount of water, etc. I mean, it was a little difficult. This next card, I'm using my Zig Clean colors and some liquid watercolors. And these are Bria Reese. I got them from Hobby Lobby. They're a couple of dollars a piece. These are the only liquid watercolors I have. I've seen the Doc Martin ones, and I kind of wanted to get those. But they're a little more pricey. And so, as you can see, some of them I put down just drawing and then blending out the color or moving the color around. And again, this is dry, and I'm just taking my wet brush and moving the color around. So I do all of the Zig colors first, and I probably didn't put enough on to give a fair comparison. If you've used Zig, you know that they are awesome colors. You have to have the right paper, but they are awesome colors. They're beautiful, they move well on the right paper. And so I probably didn't do, I mean, the yellow on this doesn't look as vibrant as it really is if I had applied a little bit more color. So I go ahead and dry that, and then I replace my tape in another direction or over the other color so that I can place the liquid on top. And so with the liquid, I just put a little drop in my inkwell thing and took my paintbrush. And I did spritz it probably twice with water to get it a little more, so there's a little more liquid in there. And this is my little 8 container. I love this for watercoloring. I think it works great. Like, I can leave them in there and dry them up and then come back and use them again. Just reactivate with water. So these I love these liquid watercolors. I don't know what the more expensive brand is. Like a lot of stuff that I do, I'm not an artist, I'm not a professional, and so a lot of stuff I do is it just, you know, it looks really pretty to me, or I like the way that it works, more than anything, more than looking at the light fastness, or whether this is going to last forever. I mean, these are cards, so I'm not concerned about that most of the time. I mean, if I were doing paintings or something like that, I probably would be, and I'd probably be more interested in learning about, you know, the higher quality or the artist grade supplies. But for now, I mean, this works for me. Sorry, and my screen has a black line on the side. I ended up moving it and I didn't get it all the way over. So the next ones I'm using are Distress Stains and some Stampin' Up! Reinkers. And so the Distress Stains are pretty liquid anyhow right when you put them down, so you don't really have to add much water. I do add a little bit of water, just like I did with the liquid watercolors, to the Stampin' Up! Ink. And again, these I just used a drop. And the Distress I just put on my mat. But I tried to match up the colors. I didn't have that many Distress stains. I mean, to be honest, I don't know really what you use them for. I bought them at Tuesday Morning because they were super cheap and I didn't have any. But, you know, other than that, I don't know really what they're used for. So on this one, I did wet down the paper, and I just kind of putting some ink down. As you can tell, since it's wet, it kind of spreads that ink out, and it looks kind of like groovy in a way. And this cuts out on me. I do the same thing with the red, but I believe it cuts out on me so you don't actually see me doing it. So this is a Distress stain. And then I'll just put, I put some, kind of just like set my paintbrush down to get a couple of little ink spots, I guess, and they spread. And it just looks kind of like a psychedelic card to me, I guess. And so this was another Distress, I believe. And as you can see, they're pretty liquid. And so I'm just kind of experimenting and putting down some different colors. And so this one right here is a re-inker. And so I just put it in my little inkwell and kind of swirl it around. Add a little bit of water. And then I also wet my brush. So it's basically a wet on wet. The next one I did is I stamped out some images on a piece of watercolor paper or cardstock. And I'm using my water brush pen for this. I don't usually put water in the barrel. I just dip it into my clean water. But these are Artist Loft watercolor pencils. And I could not find my sharpener, so when I started doing the yellow stars, they did not spread real well. I don't have any other watercolor pencils to compare to, so I don't know. These aren't the best quality, I would say. They didn't spread extremely well. Some colors did better than others. And also, it probably would have been better if I had my pencils sharpened, because since I didn't, they didn't really spread as well as I would have liked. But they work decent. I don't have a problem with them. I think they're probably the $5 range again, like the other Artist Loft items are. And some of the pictures that I colored look really nice with the watercolor pencils. So it might just be my technique. And again, some of the pencils weren't sharpened, and so that didn't help that they were too dull. Because it was harder to put the color down on the paper. But I do think they're decent. I have been eyeing the Derwent, not the watercolor, but I think they're called ink tints. I've seen those used, and they just look like really dreamy. And that's just another item that I just, it's in the higher price range, and so it's not something that I've actually purchased. The most expensive item out of all of these that I'm experimenting with for the watercolor is, I think it's the next item that I do. And it's an item I absolutely love, and I don't use enough. And so it's my goal to start using it a little bit more. But, so the castles, I really like how the colors came out on those. So, it might just be my technique. It spread well. I had enough amount of pencil to be able to get enough color down where, when I placed the water on, it worked really well. So I think these would work perfectly fine. I don't plan on buying any more watercolor pencils, just because, I don't use them that much, and so I don't think it's worth to go out and buy, a more expensive brand of watercolor pencils, especially since I'm not using them. But so now I'm just taking, part of this is just ink from, God, I don't think that's a pencil. I think I actually took a Spectrum Noir glitter pen and put that down on my mat and squirt it, kind of moistened it with water to get the background. So these are the most expensive, probably one of the most expensive art supplies I have. And I hope I won't mess up the name, it's Karan Dash, or Dash, and they're water soluble crayons. These are absolute, well worth the cost. I mean, when I told my boyfriend I was paying $60 for some crayons, he thought it was kind of crazy. I don't think I show these off to the best of their what they can do in this video. But I love these things. They are absolutely just, they're a great item to have, and it's like one of those items that I really don't use as much as I should. But they are, if this, if you're looking at wax soluble or water soluble crayons, these are awesome. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking a stencil. I took a stencil and I'm coloring in a little bit heavy-handed and then spreading the color. So the good thing about these colors is, as you can see, I wiped that off. It came right off. The good thing about these is that you can layer them. And another good thing about them is they can either be transparent, translucent, or opaque, depending on how much water you add to the color. So you can have that huge variety or range of how much you can see through to the end with these colors. This is the one card I did not end up making at the end. Unfortunately, I messed up big time on it. I was kind of disappointed in myself. But those were the Neo colors. So the next one I'm doing is Distress crayons. I only have one set of 5 of those. And then I'm using gelatos, and I'm using the Recollections. I guess they're called crayons, but I mean they're in the little tube like a lipstick, and they're kind of the same consistency. So basically I'm just taking, I started out putting it directly on the paper. I didn't really like that, so at that point I just started putting it on my craft mat and wetting down the color and kind of mixing it, especially with the gelatos, because they tend to clump up a little bit. So you kind of have to mix those a little bit more than maybe something else. And then just putting my paintbrush in water and spreading that on the paper. And so I'm just doing random pattern, nothing really in particular. So I take each of the colors. As you can see right now, I'm using the gelatos. I started out using the gelatos, I believe. Some of them are shimmer colors, some of them are not. I think I have 2 different sets or 3 different sets of gelatos, and I don't use them a whole bunch. I seem to be saying that a lot. I have these supplies that I just don't use. I see them and I want to do, all these projects with them, and then, but I mean, it's good to have them in case I need them for something. So I think this one was the gelatos also. So next I'm just going to take a darker gelato color and water that up and do some splashes on my paper. And so the last card that I do is I think it is Wilson. It's just a tube of off-brand watercolor paint and some food coloring. And this is Wilson, I believe it's Wilson, gel food coloring. I use these for so much stuff, so I just already had them, so I figured I would try. They work awesome, actually. They work really well. So I'm just doing some ink swishing. The first one I did was, I think I did actually both. So the blue is the food coloring. But since I kind of combined those, I kind of just wanted to show the food coloring by itself. And so I just take a little bit out with a spoon. And this is the food coloring by itself. So the only thing bad about food coloring is it kind of stains your fingers. So I just made sure to clean up like right away, like my brush and everything. The next one I'm doing is purple color, and so I'm doing a tube again, and then purple gel food coloring. And I'll go ahead and spritz those with water. So this, what I'm showing right now, is going to be the food coloring. And then I'll go ahead and take the tube watercolor. But as I was saying, I use these gel food coloring for everything. I use them for sprays. They make awesome, vibrant sprays, comparable to Dilution sprays. And there's like so many colors that, you know, you can just use them for so many things. I also use them for traditional, like I use them at Christmas in some mints that I made. I used them for some flower vases that I had. So I guess I should stop talking. So the first one, that was the card. The second one is kind of a basket weave card. And I love how this card turned out. I think it's really pretty. So the next card is the kind of psychedelic card. And so basically I've just stamped that and added a few sequins and some Spectrum Noir sparkle pen droplets. The next card, I've just added some words. So pretty much I've just made what I could out of each watercolor panel that I experimented with. And I love this process. I loved getting out all my stuff and seeing what worked with what and how each worked. So basically my synopsis of this whole video is that they all kind of work the same pretty much. None of the products I have are probably, you know, super high quality products. They're probably just the average products you would have, or the average crafter would have. Some of them, like the Kuretake watercolors and the Neo colors, are probably a little bit higher price range than a lot of the other stuff. But I say work with what you have. I see stuff all the time. New stuff comes out and it looks awesome. Like the Peerless watercolors, like those are one things that I look at and I'm like, oh, those are so beautiful. But really, are they that much different than anything else I'm using? And is it worth the expense to go buy, you know, more stuff when I'm not, you know, a professional level? Like, this is something that's fun for me and I enjoy it, but I'm not by any means an expert on any of it. I see what I like and I do what I like, and that's pretty much about it. I wanted to mention that I have a blog. I've had it since about February, and I haven't been real good about updating it, but I have. The last couple of projects I've done, I've updated it with cards, pictures, and more information. And I also just started an Instagram account. So if you want to check those out and find out more information about the cards that I've made and some better pictures, you can always go to those links. Those links will be in the About section of my YouTube page. So if you want a little bit more information, you can always use those two resources. Here I basically just put all of the colors, or all of the mediums that I used, on one sheet. I tried to pick similar colors, and as you can see, I look at this and I think they're all beautiful. So like I said, pick what you like. It's hard not to buy new supplies, I know, but I guess that's my whole thing about this experiment. It kind of made me realize I don't need to buy it, even though I want to. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate everybody that subscribes and that watches my videos. I love making them so much, or I wouldn't do it. And I hope you love it as much as I do. So, please like and subscribe, and check out my blog and my Instagram if you're inclined to do so. And I hope to catch you later. See ya.